Hi, Louise. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Siddharth. Lovely to connect with you today.
Yeah, likewise. I'm quite fascinated to know about your journey. So tell me about your journey to traditional astrology.
Well, actually, I started off, with a BCom degree and got into marketing in the media,
Hmm.
and my last kind of like role was at independent newspapers,
Wow.
and I really enjoyed the media, the news, current affairs, but also the journalists, the creative aspects of it, the connecting with the advertisers, working with the ad agencies, because I'd come from that environment as well. So yeah, it was a lovely place to be, particularly because this was in 1994. So it was very interesting and significant time in South Africa's journey. And yeah, it was it was a privilege almost, you know what I mean, to be in that space as South Africa was embarking on its journey as a democracy, and kind of like understanding the role of the media in a place like ours where there was one kind of like dominant party and kind of like the role of holding those in power accountable, and yeah, fulfilling that role in society was interesting, and getting an insight into that, because obviously now times are very different. So
Okay.
yes, so
Uh-huh.
that was, my kind of like first kind of like career, first gig,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I was definitely looking for a change. I was, I couldn't imagine myself doing that forever. I had started studying a whole lot of different things, from massage, Reiki, reflexology, tissue salts, aurosoma, polarity
Hmm.
therapy. And the polarity therapist was also an astrologer, and I would sit
Oh.
around her dining room table, on a Tuesday evening, and it was totally fascinating. And I did this for about 8 or 9 months. But I kind of like came home and I could never recreate, what we chatted about, because it was too
Hmm.
complicated and too complex. And so I realized that I needed to study it properly. And then I made inquiries with Rod, and actually I missed the deadline for, the following year. And I was actually quite disappointed, because I was keen to kind of like get started, because it was the thing that really kind of grabbed me. And so the long and the short of it was, all these things actually became way more interesting than what I was being paid to do. And I basically resigned, and I wanted to study again and, find a new path. So I did that, and the following year, I enrolled in Rod's course. And what's interesting, sometimes, we don't understand these things at the time, but they make sense in time. Is that, unbeknown to me, there was huge changes happening in astrology globally, and there was this project called Project Hindsight, and a lot of these
Oh.
ancient texts were being retranslated, and a lot of this knowledge was, what I mean, being rediscovered and coming to the fore. And actually, the year that I started studying with Rod was the first time that he changed his course. And the biggest fundamental change was the traditional rulers of astrology. So
Oh.
to use the modern planets Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune as generational planets and not rulers of signs. So, it was actually quite a blessing that I didn't get accepted in the year that I had wanted to, because I ended up getting taught in the way that astrology was moving. And I didn't understand any of this at the time, but it obviously became more relevant as I, continued on my journey, basically. So I suppose the things that really interest me are natal astrology, birth charts, working with clients. I mean, I really enjoy that process of working with the client, because it's an incredibly privileged position to have this insight into somebody's life and actually to explain to them, you know what I mean, their path and their journey, you know what I mean, as it needs to unfold, you know, the way that it should. So yeah. And then I suppose also then, because of my background in the media, I've always really been interested in the current affairs and that. So it sort of made sense for me to pick up on that, because, you know, none of us like politics, but the reality is that politics affects lives. It affects all of us. And so, you know, we should really be interested in you know, these dynamics, you know, whether you call it politics or societal change or, you know, all these kind of things. And actually, one of the first things that I did was I created a spreadsheet, and I looked at all the hard aspects between, you know, Jupiter, Saturn, and you know, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, and you know, so that I could see in a spreadsheet where things were colliding and start kind of like looking at patterns and understanding patterns. And I suppose that's also interesting because, you know, history seems to have this way of repeating itself, and it's because cycles repeat themselves, you know. So yeah, and then, you know, I mean, I sometimes, you know, work with horary, but not often. Often it's to do with finding lost items, which actually happened a few weeks ago. Somebody that I know lost a very expensive bracelet, and the insurance company were having a hissy fit about, you know, wanting to pay out. And I said to her, let me draw a chart. And, you know, I actually wanted to see whether she was likely to find the bracelet. And the chart showed me that she was likely to find the bracelet.
Wow.
And if it was in her house, it told me that it was in the garage or a junk room. But the chart definitely indicated that in all likelihood, a friend would help her find the bracelet. And that's exactly what happened. A friend picked it up on the field, and she didn't. My thing keeps dropping. Is it dropping on your side?
Yeah, I didn't hear the last few bits. You were mentioning about the bracelet.
So yes, so that's exactly what happened. A friend found the bracelet on a field, and she didn't even realize that she'd lost it there.
Amazing.
So yeah, so that, you know, it's just interesting. And yes, I'm happy she, you know, was reunited with the bracelet, and I think the insurance company was quite happy too.
Yeah, they're gonna save a lot of money.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of like me. I mean, I love interactions with clients, and you know, so basically, you know, people come to us when they're facing a difficulty, and so, you know, as much as AI is driving things, you know, I think the reality is we're still human, we're still physical, emotional, spiritual, mental beings, and there's something that's quite powerful about what happens in that consultation room when you have created a safe space. You are listening, you know what I mean? You're providing insight and guidance as to what the, you know, astrology indicates. And there's something powerful about being heard. And that's when healing happens. And that's a process that I really love to be, you know, part of, to facilitate those kind of conversations, because I think, you know, astrology is actually enormously powerful and empowering. And if we can, you know, share that with individuals, you know, that's amazing. And I think the other lovely thing about astrology is it holds complex contradictions and allows for that. And I think there are a lot of other sort of like more sort of psychological models that almost want to box people as one thing. And astrology so beautifully explains the complexity of us as individuals. And it's okay, you know. So I find myself talking a lot about isness. It just is. And sometimes it's not logical, it's not fair, but it is. So yeah. Yeah, I think, don't know what anything else that
I know it's very fascinating. Okay, so tell me, who are the people that you look up to in the space that you're in?
So I mean, obviously Rod, because he was my teacher, and you know, he certainly taught me the most. But you know, and actually I learned, you know, in a physical hall with him and 30
Wow.
other people. And by the time because this was 2004, so by the time we finished, there were about 9 or 10 of us who'd completed his 3-year diploma. And you know, and then he moved to school online. And then what was lovely was to be part of, you know, workshops and things like that. So you know, that's also been interesting to see how the space has changed. And yeah, I was also lucky enough to, you know, just be sort of starting out when Nikki Alsop and Bippen were organizing their conferences. And it was at a time where, you know, people wanted to come to South Africa. And so they managed to get the most incredible lineup of speakers, you know, coming here. So, you know, like Bernadette Brady and John Frawley and, you know, a whole a whole heap of really interesting speakers. So, you know, that's been, you know, lovely. But actually now the online options are fantastic, and, you know, they make it really affordable. You know, I've just attended Wade Cave's, you know, Global Mundane astrology conference this weekend, and yeah, it's wonderful, you know what I mean, hearing different astrologers from around the world. And you know, they all come with their own unique insights of where they find themselves. And yeah, and that's really, really interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is one of my I love this book of Nicholas Campion's, you know, the book of world horoscopes. I mean, it's a just incredible resource. Yeah. And I suppose that's, you know, the other thing that's changed is, you know, I have a lot of reference books, but so much of the stuff is, you know, now online. So, you know, now you're able to, you know, follow people online in terms of YouTube channels and Facebook, you know, posts, etc., etc. So, you know, it's all fantastic, actually. I also actually quite like following some of the financial astrologers, because not that I'm really focused on you know, trades, but financial astrologers interested in political events, because, you know, politics moves markets. So because it's all about people. So that's also quite interesting, you know, and also then you get a different insight, you know what I mean? So, you know, follow American or UK based or Europe, you know, so you getting a different insight from the rest of the world, you know, not different from your place.
Okay, so what have been your highlights thus far?
Definitely the client interactions, you know, that's a real joy for me. But I also I'm curious, you know, I'm pondering a lot of things. So I love, you know, looking at things for myself and trying to understand them, and then write about, you know, them and what I see, and, you know, and help people try and make sense of things, because it's definitely a very, you know, interesting time. There's a huge amount of change, and knowing on some level that change is necessary is very useful when things feel chaotic and unstable. Knowing that there's a divine order that's unfolding, and things will unfold as they should, but trying to get an understanding of what that is. Do you know what I mean? What are the rhythms and the themes and the flow? Yeah. So yeah, and then, as I said, the highlights for me have definitely been, being able to view things online more easily and more affordably. It's definitely a fantastic. It's great for everybody, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Any lowlights, if any?
Well, that is the other thing, is that online also creates a whole drama around misinformation, and I suppose, coming from my background of the media, where in that building that I worked in, there was a healthy tension between editorial integrity and independence and the commercial aspect of that business, and that tension was necessary for that business to flourish. And there were often instances where advertisers didn't like what was written about them, and then threatened to withdraw advertising, and and then the tension was very obvious. And we've kind of like moved from that model to something that's got no kind of like guardrails, and no accountability, and so when I worked in the media, we used to joke about the fact that the editors reported to God. They were that powerful, and they were that fiercely independent. And so somehow we're going to have to work out, it's just the responsibility around publishing. So as an individual, I love the freedom of being able to write what I want to write. But you know what I mean? It's like when you're trying to misrepresent information or create disinformation, that obviously complicates things. So yeah, there's something uncomfortable about that, and I suppose in time it will resolve itself. Yeah.
So what are your plans for this year and beyond?
Definitely, more of the same.
Okay.
Want to keep, working with, clients, keep watching the planets, keep, looking at what's unfolding across societies, around the world, because we are in this incredibly important sort of transition phase. Yes, I think, we're likely to see some borders changing, because there's a big connection between early next year and 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell down and communism collapsed. So, something significant is going to happen in societies across the world. And yeah, you just have to watch the news or read, and know that there's an enormous amount of instability currently as things are getting reorganized. Yeah, and I love the involvement with CASAPA, so to keep engaged with that platform locally. Yeah.
Okay, so finally, what are your words of inspiration for astrologers, for people that may want to enter the space that you're in?
I would say you need to find a good teacher, and it's something that's really difficult to learn on your own. And there are many teachers across the world, and that's the joy of online. Rod was a fantastic teacher, but if you were inspired to join a school elsewhere, there are many options. So but I would say that it's find a school that is organized, that has a structured curriculum, because it needs to be done in a methodical, proper way, because there's enormous amounts of information. So that would be my first thing. And yeah, and I think as well, keep a broad interest. I'm really interested in nature and spirituality and health and wellness, and I mean, there are people doing fantastic things. Like there's a woman in New Zealand called Veda Austin who's working with the consciousness of water. It's really fascinating stuff. So I'm not only interested in strictly astrological things, and yeah, I like that. I mean, I'm reading this book at the moment, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and it's also just beautiful insights about the simplicity of certain ways of being, and those kind of things really resonate with me.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm, when you said Rod, are you referring to Rod Susskind?
That's right, yes, Rod Susskind.
Okay. Yeah, I had the fortune of doing a chat with them, so I just wanted to confirm it was the same one.
Yes, it's the Rod Susskind. Yeah, I mean, I think he is our most well-known astrologer in South Africa, or definitely, in terms of Western.
Okay. Well, I got to say that thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we can catch up soon.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. It was lovely to connecting with you today.
Likewise.
Cheers, Siddharth. Bye.
Care.